Hello, Paddle and Fin Nation. We are back here with another Noobs show, Fishing for Noobs. I'm Matt Gibson, your host for the Fishing for Noobs portion on Paddle and Fin here. I'm here sipping on my kayak coffee. Go to kayakcoffee.com. Use promo code kayakfishbrew20. That's all capital letters. You'll get 20% off of that. Cross Kicks is a brand that just came on board with us on Paddle and Fin. New code there is new20, and that's a capital NEW 20. Go check out their shoes. They're great shoes, great water shoes, great off the water shoes. I know I was talking to Dustin Nichols the other day. Dustin is down south. He's talking about using those for years now. So great product there. Also, Dubra Fishing. Use Matt G10. We have a special guest with us today, Greg from Vicous Fishing. I'm really excited to talk about line choices, kind of their everything that they offer. I've been using their line for years and years now. It's a great line at a great price. So we'll talk to Greg about that. With that, we'll play a clip here, and then we'll be right back with Greg. Awesome. Greg, welcome to the show, and I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Looking forward to talking.
Yeah. So let's just start off Vicous Fishing. When did you guys start? Kind of a little background about Vicous.
Yeah, so Vicous has been around since 2000. I guess we shipped the first spool in 2007. That was prior to my ownership of it, but I was working with the team at that point as an outside consultant in marketing. So started in Alabama in 2007, I guess. I came on full time with them in 2012, and then in 2018 was approached by the ownership there to purchase it. They had basically had just decided they didn't want to work in the manufacturing world anymore for the reasons that anyone who's done it in the past understands.
Yeah.
And I had done it a long time, was comfortable with it, decided to take a little risk. So Corey and I talked it over and decided to jump in. And so October 1st of 2018 was officially the date that we bought the company. Went down, packed everything up, moved it here to our home in Indiana. She and I had been basically running all the office stuff from home offices here in Indiana for a couple of years at that point. So we knew what we were getting into and knew there were some challenges in front of us, but felt like we could make some things happen. And so just took a little chance and jumped out there.
That's awesome. It's great. And your brand, I mean, it's grown and grown and grown. I feel like I used to see it around here, and then now I travel anywhere, and gosh, you guys have kind of expanded all over. Kind of what stores are you guys in?
Well, we have expanded a lot. Really, since we've bought it, every year we've grown, which is great to be able to say. I want to say our independent base is close to tripled. On the stores that we ship direct, we don't really know, when it's in distribution, you don't really know where it goes. But so sometimes I go places even like, oh, wow, look at that, we're here.
Yeah.
We don't always know. So from a independent base, it's pretty national. We work with several of the larger distributors, even up into Canada, and we've got distribution in Mexico as well, where they're shipping it all over their counties. And then, from a chain standpoint, our largest chain is Walmart, working with Dunham Sports, Cow Ranch, several of the farm supply stores that are out there. So really just trying to expand, and really you can find us just about every state, obviously not every store. We're still a long ways to go to get what I would consider really full distribution on the brand, but definitely seeing the growth that would lead us to believe we'll get there some point.
Right. Yeah. And I will say too, with that growth, I mean, your lineup has also changed and it's continued to grow. So, I mean, you guys offer everything from braid to mono, fluoro. So out of that, kind of what would you say is kind of your guys' specialty in that? Is it do you see most growth in braid and fluoro and mono, or just kind of all of it?
Yeah. Being honest, all of it has really grown for us. All three line types are now being carried by Walmart at some level. Dunham's carries close to 80 SKUs. So we're really shipping everything. If I looked at just purely the number of spools shipped, our panfish line is definitely our biggest seller. The high vis yellow 468 330s quarter-pound spools. It's just such a good deal, and it's a great quality product. Price points, less expensive than a lot of the guys out there, and you're not giving up anything in quality. And so as people use it, they find, wow, this stuff really works. And it just continues to grow for us. So, if I'm looking at the best products, just from sheerly number of spools sold, our panfish line as a monofilament is definitely our number one. But then as you look across braid and fluorocarbon, that's the same thing. I mean, it's not the specialty lines that really drive the mass market for us. It's our 100% fluorocarbon, just a basic 100%. It's going to retail right around that $13, $14 starting point. And then our braid's the same way. It's just a standard braid, green, yellow, blue, depending on where you're fishing. But it's those are the key items for us.
Gotcha, guys. Yeah, it's funny. It seems like monofilament kind of faded a little bit there in the industry. It's coming back a little bit. I mean, me personally, I still use a lot of mono. One thing, the price point's great. For somebody starting out, it's a very affordable line. But also, I typically use your guys' 14-pound monofilament, and I use that for top water applications, and also been messing with it a little more with crankbait applications as well.
Yep. There's no doubt the monofilament there for a while. You'd have thought nobody was using it just because of the way the industry was talking about it. And if you paid too much attention to what the industry was saying, all the buzz was fluorocarbon and braid and the leader and tying those two things together. But if you were on our side of it, you knew the monofilament was still selling. I think the masses still use a lot of monofilament, probably because of price point. And to be honest, it catches fish. If you're out there and you're just enjoying your time on the water, it'll catch fish. There's no doubt. A lot of the characteristics are very similar to fluorocarbon. You'll give up a little sensitivity, maybe a little bit on the hook set, but for the most part, it'll get the job done.
Yeah. So kind of talking through line and applications for lines. Can we kind of dig into that? So what's kind of an application that is prime for? Well, let's start off with your braided product. So braided line.
Yeah. So braid floats. So you're not going to use it for anything where you're trying to get deep. Flipping, pitching, heavy cover. Had an opportunity, in July while we were at ICAST to go and flip mats in Florida. No way you can do that with anything but braid. It's got to be able to cut through that vegetation for sure. So if you need solid hook sets, you don't want the stretch in there, and you don't need it to sink, braid's a great option. It does last a long time. It's got a long life in comparison to the other two. Unless you're really fishing some really rough cover that's got a lot of sharp edges, braid can get weak pretty quickly if you're doing that. But without that braid, that's kind of where I would put braid for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it top water applications, frogging, the flipping application you talked about, and then being from Indiana, obviously, swim jig is kind of a staple here. And man, a 30-pound braid with a swim jig is tough to beat as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you guys offer no fade braid. So what's the difference between that and kind of the regular line of braid you guys have?
I'll be honest with you, it's pretty insane the differences in it. So our standard braid is a 4-strand braid up to 50-pound test, and once it gets bigger than that, it goes to an 8-strand. So our no fade braid is actually an 8-strand all the way through, with the exception of the 10-pound. The 10-pound test is a 4-strand. From a castability standpoint, our no fade is much slicker. Just seems to cast further than our standard braid. But the biggest difference is just right there in the name. It will not change color. That product will look new 2, 3 years. It just maintains color, unlike anything we've ever seen. It truly is just an absolute premium product. You're going to get a long life unless you're really breaking it off a lot or getting hung up and have to cut it. It's a no-brainer to buy. It's a little more expensive. You're going to pay about 3 times more for it, but it's going to last, way longer. If color is important to you, you can get rid of the markers. You don't have to do any coloring. It just holds it. We've got it in green and yellow. Both do a great job, and it's continued to grow for us as guys have tried it and realized that it was worth the money to buy a little higher end product.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me because when I saw it, I was like, man, is this kind of like one of those marketing gimmick type deals? And then I started throwing it more, and I'm like, man, this is way slicker. It goes through the eyelets of a rod much easier. Man, I've switched completely over to it, and that's kind of what I've stuck to, and it really is a great product.
You're not alone. Whenever the supplier first came to me with it, I mean, it probably took them a couple of years of trying to sell me on this stuff. And I'm like, look, all braid fades. I know everybody says
Yeah,
our braid fades less than the next braid. It all fades. And like it just, and so he just kept hitting me with it, saying, you really need to check this out. And so finally I said, send me some. So he sent me several spools. I shipped it out to some of the guys in the field and immediately got response back like, holy cow, this stuff doesn't change. And so I literally have guides that I worked with when we first developed it, are just now replacing it, in year 4, year 5, or just now starting to replace it because it will eventually go bad. I mean,
yeah,
it's fishing line, but it won't change color.
no,
It's insane.
no. And if you're anything like me, I throw my fair share of backlashes on a bait caster. So it seems like anywhere that you get those points where you backlashed, it seems like that's where braid will really change colors really quick. If
Yep.
that's no fade, it just doesn't do it.
No, it's not going to change. It's not a coating. So the difference between no fade and the standard braids are all, done white, and then they coat them with a coloring on the outside, and that coating is going to come off obviously as you use it. No fade is colored prior to braiding it, so it's actually a green strand that gets stranded together, and so there's no coatings to come off, and that's what keeps it looking so slick and shiny. And like I said, you'll have it 2 or 3 years, and it'll still look shiny. Now, if you compare them side by side, brand new versus 3-year-old, you will see the difference between the two. But I promise, in year 3, if you don't put it next to a new one, you will still think it's new. It just looks that good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So moving from that so I guess let's kind of dive into fluorocarbon. It's interesting looking at your guys' fluorocarbon lineup. You guys continue to expand that, but with fluorocarbon, kind of what's the applications that you recommend for fluorocarbon?
Yeah. So fluorocarbon's the same thing. If you want to get deep, it sinks quicker than monofilament or the braid. So deep applications are definitely there. Guys are using it for flipping and pitching. Generally, whenever you get into some cover that's maybe got some sharp edges, that kind of stuff, it'll hold up a little better. I know a lot of our guys like to flip and pitch with it around docks and boats and that kind of stuff, because it will hold up better than the braid whenever it doesn't, to the abrasion side of things. So that's always been primary use for that. And we offer several grades of fluorocarbon. Again, just have slightly different attributes. So our standard, right out of the gate, is got a little more memory to it, but it's just tough as nails. It just holds up. It's got better abrasion resistance. A lot of guys use that for just short arm combat, up close combat type stuff is good with that. And then you go into our Pro Elite. Our Pro Elite's a little better casting product, has a little less memory to it, but probably not the abrasion resistance of the 100%. So you're kind of giving up one for the other, depending on what you're doing with it. And then the other product that we have is our Toro, which is unbelievable stuff. Super small diameter compared to other comparable line diameters and strength. So the diameter is really small. Just a phenomenal product. Most guys have moved to using that as a leader product, primarily because the cost is pretty high for it. But it truly is a game changer if you need smaller diameters. So in today's world of the finesse trend that's going on, it's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, it's a great line, and I when you guys first released it, I got some. Use that on my cranking rod, and now I've also kind of moved towards that as I've noticed kind of how soft it is and how it doesn't have any memory hardly at all, really, for a fluorocarbon line. It's a really great product offered at. I mean, when you compare it to other higher end fluorocarbons, it's still a great price point as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, it truly does. You take it off the spool and just let it hang, and it almost has no memory in it, which
Hmm.
is really unusual. And what we were shooting for when we came out with it, we knew it wasn't going to be for everybody, but
Yep.
we just wanted to show that we are capable of really high end products, just like anyone else. And that was really the idea behind it. And it's done pretty well for us. I have to say, probably better than I expected in way of sales, just because of the price point. I wasn't 100% sure people would go that high for it, but it sells.
Yeah, and talking with you down at ICAST, one of the things I'm really excited about is you're going to offer that in a lower pound test now.
Yeah. So next year we're going to come down to the 8 pound again, understanding where we are today with the forward facing sonar, and everybody's looking for lighter baits and smaller things and castability and getting down the water column. So we're going to bring out the 8 pound test in that, just to downsize it a little bit. The guys were, most of our guys out there were kind of requesting, could we get smaller with it? So it'll be an 8 pound. It's going to have about the diameter of a 6 pound line. Uh, pair that up with a 10 pound no fade, and it's a pretty dangerous combination, really.
Yep, yep. And so is that was the thought process behind that not only to have a premium product, but also were you guys really dialing in that line diameter with that one as well? Is that
Absolutely. When we went to our suppliers, it was, my direction was very simple. I wanted the most technologically advanced fluorocarbon that was available at the time. Um, wasn't sure what that was going to cost us and what we could afford to do. And again, benefit of being a family-owned independent business, I don't have to please anyone. So we just had to be profitable with it. And so, are we making the higher margin percentages on that product? No, but we do make money on it, and that's really was the end goal, was to offer something at a high end that people could get. And it'd probably be more money if it was going through somebody else than what we're doing with it, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was about to say. With that product, I feel like that if that was had a different name on it, it would be 25, 30, 40% more than what it is.
More than likely. Yeah, we definitely do not make the standard margins from a percentage standpoint, but we did build in enough because our dealers, they got to make money and they got to stay in business as well. And so, you have to build in the percentages that they want, but we didn't have to have the percentages on our end. And so that's really kind of the way that product was developed. But yeah, when they came to me and said, we have something that literally is going to fish near mono as you can get fluorocarbon in, the diameter was smaller, like, okay. And to be in our process, the way we do things, I didn't just say, okay, let's do that. They send options, and we test things with our pro staff. So I've got a handful of guys that I just have on the list that when I get something new in, I send it to them blindly. Don't really tell them what it is. I just say, hey, I want you to fish this, and this is kind of the ideas that behind it. What do you guys think? And that was one that sometimes I'll hit something where people start calling, and it's like, what in the world is this stuff?
Yeah,
And that one was one of them where they called, and it was just no fade was one. The Tora fluorocarbon was one where they called and just immediately were like, what's this? This is something different. And it's like, well, here's what it is. And so that's when we kind of start down that process of what can we do and can we afford to bring it to market? So we were able to, and we did.
no, it's tremendous, and it is a great line. And what I do appreciate about one of the things I appreciate about you guys is you guys offer a wide range at different price points too. So your guys' 100% line fluorocarbon line, it's a great line. I've used it for years, and it is just at a tremendous price point that is really great for any angler at
Mhm.
any level to be able to afford.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to be. We want to offer anything and everything. We don't sell, all the other things. We sell fishing line, and that's primarily what we do. We have some bait stuff out there, but primarily we are a fishing line company. We want to make sure we're covering all the bases. And so that's why we have something from a 1 pound mono for ice fishing up to 250 pound braid for saltwater. We really want to offer anything and everything that you would need to fish. We're not in the fly fishing stuff at this point. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
At this point, freshwater, saltwater, we primarily are there in covering the basis, and we want the average guy to be able to fish. That's always been our major customer, and who our target was the everyday average guy who's out fishing farm ponds and fishing for food, and that was our guy. And that's so we've always wanted to offer products that appealed to that guy.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned fly fishing. I actually have a few guys that are using your leader material for predator fishing. That there's some guys out there using it for pike fishing. 50, 60 pound leader material, and man, they just absolutely love
And we do have some guys that use it. It's not marketed that way. It
it.
obviously works for that. Backer on
Yeah,
the reels, they're using it for that. Our price point's appealing. If you're just going to put it in as a backer, and you can buy, the yard 300 yards for $5 or $6 for monofilament, or that $10 to $12 on braid. That's a good price point for them to just basically not need it for anything other than filling up space. So we do sell some of that for sure.
yeah, and it's great too. And you mentioned it there is your spools. I mean, you guys offer everything from kind of that filler spool all the way up to. I mean, you guys sell. I accidentally bought probably the biggest spool of monofilament ever made
Yeah,
not too long ago. I mean, you guys offer literally
we do.
everything.
We do. So we're down to, obviously we have some leader spools that are 30 yards, and then we'll be up. Um, if you go into braid, it's like 3,000, which already seems like a lot of line. But you go to monofilament and like a 4 pound test, and you're talking about 22,000 yards on a spool.
Yeah,
I'm still shocked when we ship those out. It's like, who in the world bought 22,000 yards? But it goes out to a lot of guys who understand one product. The product will last.
yeah,
So if you can buy it at a great price, which is what you get with the bulk, um, or if they're spooling, or a lot of our panfish guys, when they're spooling 8 rods at a time for spider
mhm,
rigging, which isn't as big as it probably used to be, but
mhm,
they got a lot of rods. They're changing line. They're trolling. Um, you'll go through that pretty quickly in a year. So it may be a year's worth of stuff, but I get why some of them do. Bulk of that probably goes to guys spooling, retailers that are spooling rods, and they buy that bulk because they're spooling so many rods
yeah.
every year. But yeah, it is. We do kind of cover the gamut on spool sizes for sure. And be shocked. It's not shocking. We never have enough of them. I saw 3,000 and 1,500. It's like, can you get a 600?
Yeah.
There's always another size. There's always another pound test. So we're always gauging that and looking at it. It's like, was there really demand? Was it just one guy who said that? And so we'll hear about it and we start investigating. And if we feel like there's enough demand to offer another spool size or another SKU under a line, we'll do it. But we've got to kind of gauge minimums and what's got to be done, and just the demand for it, and does it really make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I feel like there's a lot of myths out there about maintenance and kind of care of fishing line storage, things like that. Does fishing line have shelf life, and what's the best way to store those bulk spools that you have?
Yeah. So I'll tell you this: fishing line lasts a long time if you take care of it.
Mhm.
And it's not hard to take care of. Temperature doesn't really affect fishing line a lot. Moisture can do a little, in way you'll see, you'll start to see it get a little foggy, and that's just something on the outside of it that'll usually come off. The biggest thing that hurts fishing line is sun. You just got to keep it out of the sun. So if you were at our warehouse, you'll see it's not a climate controlled environment. We have heat out there if it gets really cold, but for the most part, it's not in any type of climate control. But we blacked out all the windows so there's no sunlight coming in. Keep it in boxes as long as we can. So really, we're trying to limit it seeing daylight as much as we can until it goes out the door. But if you had it and you're storing it, it can go years and be okay. It does not just break down because it's sitting there. It doesn't rot. Um, it'll be fine. Years.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's always been myths out there of, hey, you have to have this specific condition for your fish to
Our
live.
refrigerators a lot.
Yes.
Refrigerator, and again, nothing wrong with that. It does keep the sunlight off of it. It does climate control it. It does keep moisture down. So
Yeah.
all that makes sense. I don't think it's necessary, to really have to do all of that. If you just got it in a nice dark area and you're not leaving it out on the deck of the boat where it's getting baked, it'll perform for many, many years.
Yeah. So chances are, if you keep it in that garage and it's going to be just fine
Yes.
for a while.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, Indiana, it's a little more temperament than what we had there. But when we were in Alabama, I mean, those warehouses were hot.
Oh, I imagine.
And you got to the middle of the summer and the line was fine. I mean, we had stuff that bulk spools that would sit for a couple of years and be fine. So no issue there. It'll hold up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess one line that we haven't covered is monofilament. So when are you using that monofilament, and kind of when do you use for that?
Yeah, well, obviously we think it works great for panfish
Yeah.
under the crappie line, and just with the cork and drop it down there. So entry level, definitely the way to go. It's the easiest to manage, with kids and that kind of stuff. So just off the top of my head, real quick usages are, anytime you've got a new angler, it's low cost. You can afford to replace it if it goes, something goes really bad with casting. It doesn't have a lot of memory in it, so it works great for that. Works great for the panfish because again, it's small fish type stuff. But we are seeing guys starting to use it. Top water is a big one. It floats. It keeps the bait up. Kind of the same thing. Shallow cranking. We're starting to see guys talk a little bit more about it. Those are probably the two biggest techniques we see, in way of the freshwater side of things. Saltwater guys are using it as a leader and have for a long time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a myth that it's super. There's a big difference in clarity between fluorocarbon and monofilament, but there's really not. It's You would not notice it with the human eye underwater, the difference in their clarity. Um, but so it really comes down to, do you want to spend the extra money for the performance of a fluorocarbon over a monofilament? But it'll work for a leader and has for years and years. So
Yeah, whenever somebody comes to me and they say, "Hey, I'm trying to learn how to throw a bait caster," I'm like, "Go get you 12-pound, 14-pound
yeah,
monofilament,
yeah,
and that way, if things go really really wrong, you can simply cut that line off and re-spool, and you're at
it won't hurt your feelings nearly as bad. Yeah, for sure.
exactly
And it's easier.
it is.
We have guys ask, when it comes to a spinning rod, I would just almost recommend never putting braid or fluorocarbon on a spinning rod.
Hmm.
We get emails every once in a while where somebody's put a 10 or 12 pound on there. I mean, almost impossible. Maybe if you're really, really good with fluorocarbon, but I just, most guys are 6, 8 pound tops.
Yeah,
So we always recommend going braid with a leader or just go straight monofilament. And same thing with a bait caster. The monofilament is the way to learn with that. Doesn't have near the memory. So anybody that's not ever fished with fluorocarbon is probably going to struggle with fluorocarbon when they start. It's a little tougher to fish for sure.
yeah, it can be a little finicky on a reel, and once it starts, it almost never stops. Like once you start having the issue, it's not going to go away.
No, no, it's not.
Um, Line conditioners. What are your thoughts? I know you guys have a line conditioner. Kind of what are your thoughts on line conditioners, and when do you look for that application to use that?
I just know guys that use it, every time they go out. It'll obviously add a little bit on your distance, um, keeps the line wet, and that's always a good thing. So I think its biggest is just performance off the reel and how well it does for that, and then also just keeps things kind of greased up and moving.
Yeah, yeah, it's something I've started using. So when I spool, typically what I do is I'll put the spool in a bucket of water to try to keep it a little bit wet. Seems like it helps with some memory things.
Mhm.
Also, it just keeps it from bouncing around all over the place.
Yeah,
But I've also started supplementing that with that line conditioner, and I've definitely noticed a difference in performance.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You'll see people talk about the water trick, just to it kills the memory out of it. So when you take it off of a spool and it's bigger and it goes on something smaller, it's obviously got some memory in there that's wanting to push it out. And sometimes that warm water, I first saw that as a Bill Dance trick
Yeah,
years ago, putting the reel in a bucket of water that was warm, and it would help get that memory out of it and make the memory to the spool that it was on. And that definitely works. If you take it out of the big spool, and we've been playing a little bit with taking stuff and putting it into bigger coils on the saltwater side of things, you'll see it as it gets out there. It does take some of that memory out of it. It takes a little bit. You leave it sitting out, it'll naturally just change to whatever shape it's in. And so yeah, there's definitely some advantages to that. But I think those are the biggest things for the line conditioner, is just castability and distance and what you're getting with it.
yep, yep, absolutely. And so you've mentioned a few times. I'm going to guess that you're a braid to fluoro fan as far as fishing personally.
Yeah, for the most part. I don't even, to be honest, I don't fish enough highly pressured areas. A lot of times I just go straight braid,
There you
and I don't have an issue with that.
go.
Sometimes I do it just because I think I'm supposed to. And so I
Yeah.
put the leader on there just because I feel like I'm supposed to. And I've
Yeah.
got a son who's 13 that is learning to tie the knots, and so he's always wanting to do it. It's like, go ahead, tie it on there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I am primarily a braid to fluorocarbon guy. That most of the fishing we do, unless we're out looking, for crappie or fluke
Yeah.
or whatever. But for the most part, those are the two line types I use.
So with that, what's kind of your favorite knot to combine those two, going from braid to fluoro?
FG is what we use the most.
Okay.
That's the one we've been playing with. I did play with the uni to uni knot some. Um, to be honest, I don't do it enough. The most time I go look and I'll find one and I'll try something new here or there.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not a tournament guy, so I can afford for it to fail, and it's okay if it does. But
Yep.
we just always play with things and trying different things. And we actually developed, for a while we had these little leader things that were basically two uni knots on the end of monofilament tying in between. For guys like me that, I'm not retying, every month even.
Yep.
It's hard to remember all the knots whenever you don't use them all the time.
For sure. For
And
sure.
so we'll look them up and watch the videos. And once you start doing a little bit, it clicks back to you pretty quickly. It's like, oh yeah, that's how I do that. And then you're off and running. But
Absolutely. So it, have you researched or kind of what's your thoughts on knots and kind of what's the strongest and is it all preference or
there's
is
a
there any
lot to that.
science behind it?
I think there's a lot of preference on it. Um, obviously anytime you put one strand through the eye, it's not
Hmm.
as strong as if you have two strands. So if you have something that's doubled up in there, obviously that gets better. Got to be careful that it doesn't cut itself. I don't know that there's any one. I hear a lot of people talk about the Palomar knot. It's probably the one that most people learned when they were coming through fishing. It's an easy one to tie. So I don't know that I think there's any. Everybody seems to have a preference. It really, to me, comes down to confidence. And as an angler, half the battle is confidence in what you're throwing in your equipment. When it comes to fishing line, we know that's the biggest thing. Guys just have to believe it's not going to break on them.
Yep.
And it's like one of those things that it's great, and then all of a sudden it isn't, and they'll get fickle on you quick on me. This stuff breaks on me. It's like, well, it broke one time. It didn't. It's not like
Right.
it broke all the time. So I think knots really come down to preference, memory of what to tie and how to tie it. But I definitely know guys out there fishing at a high level that use just the Palomar knot on everything. They don't ever change it. And so I really do think it's just preference.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. I'm a Palomar guy almost all the time, even with lighter line. I know with fluorocarbon, you got to kind of watch where it's crossing and how it's rubbing against each other. But as long as you're careful, I would say most of the time a Palomar knot's going to do just fine.
I agree. Most of the time I'm tying polymers if I'm just doing something really quick.
Yep.
Unless I just really, for some reason that day, decide I'm going to get something new and try something new, I'll go looking for something. But that's the one that I don't have trouble remembering because that's the one I started with as a kid and did it, all the time growing up, and it
Yeah.
just stuck with me. So um, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at the Indianapolis boat show this year, and I work that particular show with Moving Water Outfitters. But Phil Hunt from PH Custom Lures came down, and he had a new bait that we were kind of messing around in the pool, and he said, "Here, he admitted himself. He's like, hey, I'm getting older. I can't see the line as well. Can you tie a loop knot on this bait?" And I'm like, Phil, I cannot tie a loop knot. I can tie a Palomar knot all day, but that loop knot is not my specialty.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And that's everybody's got a couple knots they're comfortable with, and that's what they use. I don't think there's too many guys out there tying a lot of different knots.
Yeah.
They found something they like, unless there's some specific application like tying braid and fluorocarbon together. They're probably using very similar knot for everything. I'm not gonna say your guys out on tour that are fishing, a lot
Mhm.
probably have more knots to their toolbox than some, but for most of us that are just out here having fun fishing, we're going to have one or two knots that we're comfortable with, and that's just what we do on everything.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mean, kind of wrapping up here, I'm not, it's one of those things where, I think you guys offer a great product at a great price. Are there any coupon codes or any code discount codes that you want to share for the users, or would you recommend them just getting on Vicious Fishing or?
Obviously we prefer them to go to our retailers. That's the majority of our business is sold through retailers. If they're not sold there, definitely ask that retailer. They can get it. There's no excuse and no reason it's not there other than just they chose not to give it a peg space.
Yep.
Our website, we don't really do any discount stuff for the most part, just because again, we're here to service retailers and dealers and what we're doing. So um, I would say that's probably the best way to get it is go to your local retailer. If they don't have it, we would appreciate it if you asked. Again, as a smaller family owned business, that's huge for us is having people asking for the product because that's what really dealers are looking for to decide what they're going to carry. So
Mhm.
that would be huge for us is just having more people out there doing that.
Yeah, and I will say those retailers when you walk in there, or those shops, you walk in, and a lot of times it's not like they just have one, kind of one of your guys' lineup. It's like they carry everything. So if there's a pound test that you want or you need, yeah, I recommend going out and just asking that shop or that retailer, hey, can you get it in this size? Because you guys offer an awful lot of pound test sizes, and then we talked about it earlier. You guys have a lot of different spool sizes that you guys offer as well.
Yeah, the best place to see everything we sell is just go to our website at getvicious.com. All the products are there. All of our little diameter charts are there. Yardages that are available is all there. Um, so you can always see anything and everything we sell, and that's why we have it. Again, we're not fully distributed as a company to and so we want to make sure that we're available to everyone somehow. Our website's probably the best place to see everything.
Mm.
But you're right, we kind of cover everything, and we work pretty well with our dealers. So if you've got a dealer carrying our stuff and it's like, hey, they've got 6 pound through 17 pound fluorocarbon, but I was really looking for 4, or I was really looking for 20,
Yeah.
have them call us. We'll send them one for you. It's not that big of a deal to us. We try to make business easy. You want our stuff, we want you to have it, and we just try to make it as easy as we can for everyone to get it.
Yeah, and I will say, I've bought probably hundreds of spools from you guys at this point, from retailers and just all over the place, and being available at Walmart. You're on a trip, you go there, they have the product. It's easy to pick up. But I will say, in the times that I've bought spools from you guys, I believe the only time I've had an issue was one time, and it was with a spool that broke in multiple spots, and I just could not keep it from breaking. I contacted you guys, and you guys made it right away. So
Yeah, we believe in our product 100%. So if somebody calls me and tells me they're having a problem, we've sold enough at this point that I'm confident it's not a normal issue for us. So not that bad spools don't get out. We don't, I don't check every one before it leaves the building. So, if a bad spool gets out, we're going to replace it and take care of the customer for sure. And same thing, when it comes to, we try to handle it quickly. So orders that come in here, whether it comes from a dealer or, direct on our website, we're going to ship that stuff. We try to get it out within 24. Sometimes it goes out same day if the order comes in early.
yeah,
But I've always been a believer since I've owned it that somebody wants our stuff, we need to get it to them as quickly as we can because they asked for it. Unless they tell us to hold it up, it's shipping, and we're going to get it out of here. So yeah, for sure.
yep. So, Greg, I appreciate you being on the show. Where can people kind of find out more about Vicious? Whether it be the line, we really didn't get into lures. I know you guys offer some lures.
Yeah.
Kind of where's the best place to kind of follow you guys and get the most recent up to date news and all of that.
So obviously, from a full catalog of what we offer, I'd suggest the website at getvicious.com. But if you want to see kind of what's going on for the brand and what other guys out there are doing, check out our Facebook page, Instagram pages for Vicious Fishing. And then if you're interested in, kind of what it's like for us as owners and what we do, which probably be very similar to what you do, You can always follow me on Instagram at Greg with Vicious. That's me personally out there, and just what we as a family are doing when we're out playing, and not always overly exciting stuff I think's cool, but
Yeah,
may not. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, with that, Greg, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you being on the show. Any last parting words here? Anything that you want to kind of get out there to our audience?
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'd like for everybody to take a look at us. Give us a shot at it. I think you'll like the product. I know you're going to like the price point. Buy from us as a family-owned business out here. Really working at it in the industry. Trying to keep the dream alive, and so we just appreciate any support anybody wants to give us.
Great. That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining. Thank you to everybody for listening to the Noob Show. We're trying to get back on more of a cadence here. Make sure you listen to all the other shows on Paddle and Fin. And Greg, thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too.